Today in this video of WIH TV, we will see the events happened in the month September 1945. British Colonial Secretary Franklin Charles Gimson established a temporary government in Hong Kong. During the Chinese Civil War, the Xinhua campaign ended in communist victory and the Battle of Dazhangji began. The surrender of Japan became official when the Japanese instrument of surrender was signed aboard the battleship USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. The Second World War ended after 6 years and 1 day. The Democratic Republic of Vietnam was proclaimed when revolutionary leader Ho Chi Minh declared independence from France. General Tomoyuki Yamashita formally surrendered the remaining Japanese troops in the Philippines to United States Army General Jonathan M. Wainwright, the same commander who was compelled to surrender to Yamashita at Corregidor in 1942. The Battle of Lingbi began as part of the Chinese Civil War. The Dominican Republic ratified the United Nations Charter. Japan's Emperor Hirohito personally appealed to his people to win the confidence of the world and establish firmly a peaceful state. British troops landed at Singapore and took over without opposition. Japanese-American Eva Toguri Takino was arrested in Yokohama on suspicion of being the wartime radio propagandist Tokyo Rose. In China, the Battle of Lingbi ended in communist victory. ZEEP, the first nuclear reactor both in Canada and outside the USA, goes critical in Chalk River, Ontario. In an important early event of the Cold War, Igor Guzenko, a cipher clerk for the Soviet Embassy to Canada, defected with 109 documents on Soviet espionage activities in the West. At Rabaul, the surrender of Japanese forces in Southwest Asia was signed aboard the British aircraft carrier HMS Glory. Nicaragua ratified the United Nations Charter. Berlin Victory Parade of 1945. The Allies held a victory parade in Berlin. The Soviet JS-3 heavy tank was displayed in public for the first time. Australia ratified the United Nations Charter. Miss New York City Bess Meyerson was crowned Miss America 1945. Japanese forces in Korea surrendered at Seoul. Japanese forces in China surrendered at Nanjing. The Indonesian Navy was founded. The USS Midway was commissioned. Japanese General Hideki Tojo attempted suicide when American troops arrived at his home to arrest him as a war criminal. Tojo shot himself below the heart with a revolver, but survived. The Japanese surrender in Southeast Asia was concluded in Singapore. The war in Vietnam, 1945–1946, began. The Valdostan Union, a new political party mainly representing the French-speaking minority in Aosta Valley, was founded in Italy. The Belgian government announced that 17,000 troops would participate in the occupation of Germany. The Japanese garrison on Celebes surrendered at Manado. Strike wave of 1945–1946. The Ford Motor Company virtually stopped production in all its plants because unauthorized strikes had crippled output schedules. Commemorative parades were held throughout Britain to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the RAF victory on Battle of Britain Day. The Homestead hurricane made landfall on Key Largo and then in southern Miami-Dade County, Florida. The hurricane killed 26 people and did $60 million in damage. The United States Office of War Information was dissolved. The Japanese garrison in Hong Kong surrendered. The Belsen trial began. Joseph Kramer and 44 SS aides went on trial in British military court in Lüneburg on charges of conspiracy to commit murder in Nazi concentration camps. Eisenacher Motorenwerk resumed production with the manufacturing of passenger cars mostly intended for the Soviet occupying power. At the Old Bailey in London, William Joyce was sentenced to death for treason. British Prime Minister Clement Attlee made a worldwide broadcast promising independence for India, at the earliest possible date. New Zealand ratified the United Nations Charter. Kim Il-sung arrived at Port Wonsan and began to organize the Communist Party of Korea. The Allied Control Council in Germany passed Control Council Law No. 1, repealing of Nazi laws. German rocket engineers captured at the end of the war and brought to the United States began work on the American rocket program. Jack Thayer died at the age of 50. He was American survivor of the sinking of the Titanic. Brazil ratified the United Nations Charter. The Egyptian government demanded that British forces withdraw from the Sudan prior to its incorporation with Egypt. Japanese Emperor Hirohito said that he did not want war and blamed Hideki Tojo for the attack on Pearl Harbor. Argentina ratified the United Nations Charter. The Allied Commission declared the Nazi Party illegal. The Japanese garrison surrendered the Andaman Islands to the Anglo-Indian sloop Narbada. The freedom of the English city of Aldershot was conferred on the Canadian Army, the first time any British community had presented its freedom to a complete visiting army. El Salvador ratified the United Nations Charter. Japan's Emperor Hirohito met General MacArthur in Tokyo. Anti-Dutch rioting took place in Indonesia. China and Turkey ratified the United Nations Charter. The Bourne End rail crash killed 43 people in Bourne End, Hertfordshire, England when an overnight express train derailed due to driver error. The medal, for the victory over Japan, was established in the Soviet Union.